My name is Ethan Carter. 31 years old. My parents had 18 days in Europe to celebrate stealing my grandmother's life savings. My grandmother and I had 21 days to make sure they regretted every single one. It started at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. December tweened. Liu, 20 inches the morning. My father looked at my 72-year-old grandmother and said, almost casually, I think your ticket didn't go through. You should probably just head home. She had already given them $41,500 for that trip. She'd been packed for weeks. She barely slept the night before because she was too excited. I was supposed to get on that plane with them. Instead, I said 4 words that changed everything. I'm not getting on. They didn't know I'd read their emails 2 weeks earlier. They didn't know I'd seen the plan to put my grandmother in a care facility and take her house. And they definitely didn't know what we were about to do while they drank wine in Paris. My name is Ethan Carter. I'm 31 years old. A structural engineer in Seattle. My job is mostly numbers, blueprints, and quiet observation, figuring out where pressure builds in a structure before it collapses. It's funny how that skill translates to families. My grandmother, Margaret Hayes, is 72. She spent 40 years working as a night shift nurse at Harborview Medical Center. The kind of person who shows up early, stays late, and never complains about either. After my grandfather died 7 years ago, she stayed in the same small house in Ballard they bought back in the 80s. Mortgage nearly gone. Garden in the backyard. Bird feeders hanging from the porch. My parents are Daniel and Laura Carter. Daniel is 52. A regional sales manager for a medical supply company. Confident voice. Firm handshake. The kind of man who can sell anything if he talks long enough. My mother, Laura, is 49. She used to run a wellness startup that collapsed 2 years ago. Though she still talks about it like it's temporarily on pause. From the outside, we looked like a normal family. Holidays together. Weekly phone calls. Sunday dinners sometimes. That illusion lasted until the night my parents announced the Europe trip. It was mid-October when my parents made the announcement. We were sitting at the Capitol Grill downtown. The kind of restaurant with low amber lighting and white tablecloths so crisp they look ironed into submission. My mother liked places like that when she had something important to say. Expensive environments make people assume good intentions. My father raised his wine glass. We've got some exciting news, he said, looking across the table at my grandmother. She straightened a little in her chair. What kind of news? We're taking the family to Europe, he said. 18 days. France. Italy. Switzerland. Germany. My grandmother's hand flew to her chest. Margaret Hayes' grandma to me had never left the United States. Not once in 72 years. She'd worked night shifts for 4 decades. Sleeping during the day, while the rest of the world lived normally. Vacations meant 3 days at the Oregon coast if the hospital schedule allowed it. Europe, she whispered. My mother leaned forward, smiling warmly. We want you to come with us. Mom, you deserve it more than anyone. Grandma looked stunned. I don't even have a passport. We'll handle that. My father said easily. Everything's taken care of. You just need to pack. From where I sat across the table, I watched the small details. Years of engineering work trains you to notice stress points before something breaks. My mother's smile was tight around the edges. Her fingers were wrapped a little too firmly around her wine glass. My father's enthusiasm felt rehearsed. Like a pitch he'd practiced. But Grandma didn't see any of that. Her eyes were bright. Almost wet. I've always wanted to see Paris, she said softly. Your grandfather used to say we'd go one day. We'll make it happen. My mother replied quickly. The waiter came by and refilled the glasses. My father started talking about the itinerary: croissants in Paris, gondolas in Venice, mountain trains through the Alps. He spoke with the confidence of someone who had already imagined the photos. Grandma listened like a child hearing about Disneyland. When dinner ended and we stepped outside into the cool October air, I walked with her toward the parking lot while my parents moved ahead. Grandma was still smiling. Can you believe it? Ethan, she said. Perry, I believe it, I said. But ahead of us. My parents' voices carried through the quiet street. Urgent. She'll cover her share. Right, my mother said. My stomach tightened. We can't afford 4 people otherwise. My father muttered something I couldn't hear clearly. Grandma didn't notice. She was still talking about museums and cathedrals. 2 weeks later I stopped by her house for our usual Thursday dinner. She was waiting at the kitchen table with a thick folder spread out in front of her. Printed pages. Travel guides. Maps. Look at this, she said, pushing them toward me. The Eiffel Tower. The Colosseum. Train routes through Switzerland. She'd highlighted walking tours with a yellow marker and written notes in the margins. I've been researching, she said proudly. I don't want to miss anything important. I nodded. flipping through the pages. But that sentence from the parking lot echoed in my head. She'll cover her share. Grandma. I said carefully. Did Mom mention anything about the cost? Her face lit up like it was the most reasonable thing in the world. Oh yes. Your mother called yesterday. The trip is about 15,000 per person. 15,000. For my grandmother. That was almost a full year of careful saving. You're paying that, I asked. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Honey, she said gently. What else am I saving it for? I'm 72. When am I going to get another chance to see Paris? I didn't answer. Because something about the whole thing felt wrong. And that feeling didn't go away. A week later I stopped by my grandmother's house unannounced. It was a small craftsman home in Ballard. The same one she and my grandfather bought in 1986 when mortgage rates were still brutal and everyone said Seattle would never grow this big. The garden in the backyard was already turning brown with autumn. But the bird feeders were full like always. I walked in through the kitchen door. Grandma was sitting at the table filling out a wire transfer form. I glanced down at the number. 31,000 yuan. My hand froze on the back of the chair. 32,000, I said before I could stop myself. She looked up. Surprised, but cheerful. Oh. Ethan. I pulled out the chair slowly and sat across from her. That's more than 15. She nodded. Like the explanation was simple. Your mother called yesterday. She said there were additional expenses, travel insurance. Better hotels. Private tours. You know how these things are. I didn't. 32,000 is a lot of upgrades. I said. Grandma gave a small, embarrassed laugh. I told her I didn't want to be a burden. They're planning everything. It only seems fair that I contribute properly. Contribute properly. The phrase stayed in my head while I watched her sign the transfer form. Her handwriting was steady. Careful. Under the payment note she wrote. Europe family trip, my share. I didn't say anything else that night. But the tight feeling in my chest stayed there. 3 days later I came by again. This time she was writing a check. Another one, I asked. She looked up with the same bright smile. Just a little extra. 8,000. My stomach sank. For what? Your mother mentioned last-minute travel expenses. Restaurants. Museum passes. Maybe some special tours. I told her I didn't want them covering anything for me. I looked at the check. Payable to Laura Carter. Amount. 9,500 yuan. That brought the total to $41,500. More than half of everything my grandmother had saved. Last year I helped her reorganize her finances after my grandfather's old certificates of deposit matured. I knew exactly what she had. $87,000 in savings. Carefully built over decades of night shifts and hospital overtime. Grandma. I said slowly. Have Mom and Dad shown you any of the bookings yet? Bookings. Flights. Hotels. The itinerary. She waved her hand dismissively. They're handling all the logistics. Then she smiled. I trust them. That was the moment the knot in my stomach turned into something colder. Trust. Later that night. After I left her house. I sat in my truck outside my apartment building for 10 minutes without turning off the engine. Something wasn't right. I replayed the dinner in my head. My mother's tight smile. My father's rehearsed excitement. The conversation in the parking lot. She'll cover her share. At the time it sounded careless. Now it sounded planned. The next day I texted my mother. Why is Grandma paying $41,500 for the trip? No response. 4 hours later my phone buzzed. She insisted. Don't make her feel bad about it. That was it. No explanation. No details. Just a shutdown. My suspicion didn't explode all at once. It built slowly. Like pressure inside a sealed pipe. The week of Thanksgiving I went to my grandmother's house again to help with dinner prep. She had the checkbook open. The stub pages were neatly filled out in her careful handwriting. Treizichi do de mi wire transfer. 9,500 cashier's check. Total. Suini tenwu by yuan. More than half her savings. She was humming while she cooked. Actually humming. Like a person who had already started living the dream. Ethan. She said over her shoulder. Do you think the Eiffel Tower is as big in person as it looks in photos? Probably bigger. I said. She smiled. I've been practicing saying bonjour in the mirror. I didn't smile back. Instead, without thinking much about it, I pulled out my phone and took a quick picture of the check stub. Just a habit. At work I document everything: measurements, invoices, inspection reports. Evidence matters when things go wrong. I slid the phone back into my pocket. At the time it didn't feel like anything important. Just a photo. Just a moment. But that small habit turned out to be the first move in a war my parents didn't know they had already started. The day after Thanksgiving I went to my parents' house. They lived about 20 minutes outside the city in a quiet suburban neighborhood where every lawn looked identical and every driveway held a late model SUV. My mother had asked if I could help clean up after the holiday dinner. Most of the relatives had already left. When I got there, the house was empty. My father had gone golfing with a client. My mother had driven to the mall for what she called Black Friday therapy. The kitchen was quiet. Dirty wine glasses still sat in the sink. Half a pumpkin pie rested on the counter under plastic wrap. The smell of roasted turkey still hung in the air. I needed to print a recipe Grandma had sent me for a pecan tart she wanted to try. My mother's laptop was sitting open on the kitchen island. The email app was already running. I wasn't planning to snoop. Not consciously. But as I moved the mouse to wake the screen. One subject line caught my eye. Mom's situation, final plan. Sender. Lotta Carter. Recipient. Daniel Carter. Dated October 15. My hand stopped. Something about the wording felt wrong. Final plan. I clicked it. The message opened instantly. Daniel. I've made the appointments. Evergreen Care Residence has an opening in January. Deposit is $5,000, but it's worth it. The facility looks respectable enough that she won't question it. Once we're in Europe, we'll tell her the move is already arranged. If we handle it quickly, she'll sign the paperwork for the house when we return. She won't have a choice. The equity clears most of our debt. We need this. Dan. The creditors aren't bluffing. January 15 is the deadline, or they file for the full $197. Ling Ling. Don't tell Ethan. He'll try to stop us. Stick to the plan. She gets the trip of a lifetime. We get the house equity. Everyone wins. Laura. The room felt like it tilted. I grabbed the edge of the counter. For a moment my brain refused to process what I was reading. Then the pieces started locking together. The trip. The money. The nursing home. The house. My grandmother's house. I pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking. But I forced them steady. Click. Screenshot. Click. Screenshot. I scrolled. There were more emails. One from Evergreen Care Residence confirming a January move-in reservation. Another email listing the value of Grandma's home. Estimated market value. Lo shi yuan mei yuan. Remaining mortgage. Shu wan wu ten mei yuan. Available equity. Sishu wan wu ten mei yuan. Next email. A breakdown of my parents' debt. Carter Wellness Group LLC. My mother's failed health startup. Total outstanding liabilities. Shizhou wan si ten mei yuan. Final notice from creditors. Payment deadline. January 15. Lanshenling Arshalu. I kept scrolling. Calendar entries synced with the family iCloud account. 3 nursing home tours. Evergreen Care Residence. Lakeside Assisted Living. Northgate Senior Community. They'd been planning it for months. While my grandmother was printing travel guides. While she was practicing saying bonjour in the mirror. Click. 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 My phone camera shutter sounded loud in the silent kitchen. Every screenshot felt like another piece of ammunition. Then I opened the final email. From my father. Laura. Are you sure about this? It feels wrong. Her reply came 12 minutes later. We don't have a choice. This is survival. I stared at the words for a long time. Survival. Using a 72-year-old widow as collateral. I forwarded every screenshot to my personal email. Then I deleted the sent messages from my mother's account. Footsteps echoed in the garage. The door opened. My mother walked in carrying shopping bags. I closed the laptop exactly the way I'd found it and picked up the printed recipe from the printer. Hey. She said casually. You get the recipe? Yeah. I said. My voice sounded normal. Like nothing had happened. But in the last 10 minutes something inside me had shifted. Not panic. Not anger. Something colder. Something controlled. My mother started unpacking her shopping bags. Neither of us mentioned the laptop. Neither of us mentioned the emails. But from that moment forward I knew exactly what they were planning. And I knew something else. They thought they had 6 weeks before their plan unfolded. 6 weeks before my grandmother signed away her house. 6 weeks before the truth came out. They were wrong. They had already made one mistake. They left the evidence where I could find it. And I had just started documenting everything. December 2nd arrived like a date I'd been counting down toward. I barely slept the night before. My phone rang. Grandma. I answered immediately. Ethan. She said. Her voice soft but bright. I can't sleep. I could hear a kettle whistling faintly in the background. Too excited, I asked. She laughed quietly. I've been up since midnight. I keep thinking about the Eiffel Tower. Do you think it's really as beautiful in person as it looks in pictures? Probably more. I said. There was a pause. I checked my packing list again. She continued. 3 times already tonight. I don't want to forget anything. My throat tightened. You won't. I drove to her house. I had told my parents I'd meet them directly at the airport. They didn't offer to pick her up. Now I understood why. Grandma was already awake when I arrived. She stood in the living room wearing a navy blue wool sweater she had bought specifically for the trip. Her small suitcase sat by the door, perfectly packed. Her passport stuck halfway out of her purse. "I took the photo 3 times before I liked it," she said proudly. We loaded the suitcase into my truck. The drive to Seattle-Tacoma International Airport took about 30 minutes. Grandma spent most of it checking her purse. Passport. Boarding pass printout. Reading glasses. Passport again. The nervous excitement of someone about to do something they had dreamed about for 50 years. We arrived at 6. My parents were already there near the United Airlines check-in counters. They looked relaxed. Well rested. My father waved when he saw us. "Morning," he said. Grandma smiled at him like a kid on Christmas morning. "I'm so excited I could burst." My mother gave a quick smile. "Glad you made it." I rolled Grandma's suitcase toward them. For a moment everything looked normal. Just another family heading on vacation. Then my father pulled out his phone and frowned at the screen. "Actually," he said slowly. Grandma tilted her head. "What is it?" "I think there might be a problem." "What kind of problem?" My father scrolled through his phone like he was searching for something. "I'm not seeing your ticket confirmation." Grandma blinked. "That's okay," she said quickly. "We can check at the counter." My mother stepped forward. "Mom, we think there might have been a booking error." The smile disappeared from Grandma's face. "What do you mean?" My father sighed. "I must have forgotten to finalize your ticket." Silence. People were moving around us, dragging suitcases. Boarding announcements echoing through the terminal. But right there everything went still. Grandma stared at him. "But I gave you the money." Her voice was small. $41,500. My mother placed a hand on her shoulder. "We know, Mom. And we feel terrible. But the flight leaves in less than an hour. There's no time to fix it." Grandma's fingers tightened around her passport. "So, what do I do?" "I think it's best if you just go home," my father said quietly. "We'll send pictures." I watched her face change. Confusion. Then hurt. Then something worse. Embarrassment. Around us strangers were beginning to notice. Grandma stood there in her new sweater, holding the passport she had waited 72 years to use. "I wanted to see it," she whispered. "The Eiffel Tower. Not just pictures." My mother's voice turned soft. Almost condescending. "Mom, it's a long flight. A lot of walking. You'd probably struggle with jet lag anyway." That was the moment something inside me locked into place. I stepped forward. My mother's head snapped toward me. "Ethan, don't start. I'm not getting on that plane." My father grabbed my arm. "Don't be dramatic." I pulled my arm away. Then I took out my phone. The screen lit up between us. An email. Subject line. "Mom's situation, final plan." My mother's face drained of color. "You forgot something," I said calmly. "What are you talking about?" my father demanded. "I found your emails 2 weeks ago." Silence. The noise of the airport rushed back around us. I kept my voice low. "The nursing home deposits. The plan to move Grandma into Evergreen Care Residence." My mother lunged toward the phone. I stepped back. "I also know about the $197,000 debt." My father's jaw tightened. "Ethan. And the plan to take her house equity once she's moved." Grandma looked back and forth between us. "Ethan. What are you saying?" I didn't answer her yet. Instead, I looked at my parents. I've already saved copies of everything. People nearby were openly staring now. My father lowered his voice. "We'll deal with this when we get back." "No," I said. "You won't." I reached for Grandma's hand. "I'm staying with her." My mother grabbed my father's arm. "Victor, we're gonna miss the flight." They had 2 choices. Stay and fight me in the middle of a crowded airport. Or walk away and hope they could fix it later. My father glared at me. "You'll regret this." "Maybe." But I watched them turn and walk toward the security line. Within seconds they disappeared into the crowd. Grandma was still holding her passport. Her hand was shaking. "Ethan," she whispered. "What just happened?" I took a slow breath. "Grandma," I said gently, "they were never going to take you to Europe." The drive back to my grandmother's house took 40 minutes. Neither of us spoke. She sat in the passenger seat, holding her passport the entire time, staring out the window like she was trying to understand how the morning had turned into something unrecognizable. When we pulled into her driveway, she finally said, "One word. Show me inside." We sat at the kitchen table where she had planned half that trip. The same table still covered with travel guides and printed photos of Paris. I opened my phone. One by one. I showed her the emails. The nursing home reservation. The deposit confirmation. The messages discussing her house like it was already theirs. The spreadsheet calculating the equity they planned to take. She read every word slowly. Her hands trembled. But her face stayed controlled. When she finished, She placed my phone carefully on the table. How long have you known? She asked. 2 weeks. Why didn't you tell me? I met her eyes. Because if I told you without proof, they could have convinced you I was wrong. She nodded slowly. Then she looked at one sentence in the email again. She won't have a choice. Something inside her changed. The hurt hardened. Open my bank account, she said. I pulled up her online banking. The numbers confirmed everything. The $32,000 wire transfer. The $9,500 cashier's check. Total withdrawn. Suwai Chen Wu Bai Meiyuan. Money that had taken her 40 years of hospital night shifts to save. She stared at the screen quietly. I worked double shifts when your grandfather got sick, she said. I remember. I said. I saved every dollar so I would never have to depend on anyone. Her voice went flat. And now my own daughter thinks she can take it. She stood up. Call that nursing home. I blinked. What? The one in the email. Evergreen Care Residence. You want me to? Pretend you're your mother, she said. Confirm the reservation. I made the call on speaker. A receptionist answered. Evergreen Care Residence. How can I help you? I lowered my voice slightly. Hi. This is Laura Carter. I'm checking on the reservation for Margaret Hayes. Keyboard tapping on the other end. Yes. Mrs. Carter. I see it here. January move-in. Semi-private unit. Your $5,000. Deposit has already been received. My grandmother closed her eyes. I ended the call. They paid it, she said quietly. With your money. She walked to the kitchen window and stared out at the backyard. The small garden she had tended for decades. The bird feeder my grandfather built by hand. After a long moment she turned back to me. Ethan. I need the name of a good lawyer. The next morning I called an elder law attorney named Rebecca Sloan. I'd found her through a legal aid referral service. She agreed to meet us that afternoon. Her office was small but organized file cabinets lining one wall. Legal books stacked neatly behind her desk. Rebecca listened to the entire story without interrupting. I showed her the screenshots. Grandma handed over her bank statements. When we finished, Rebecca leaned back in her chair. This is textbook financial elder abuse, she said calmly. Your daughter and son-in-law took money under false pretenses and planned to coerce you into surrendering your property. Grandma's voice was steady. Can we stop them? Rebecca nodded. The house is entirely in your name. Then legally. They have no claim. She began writing on a legal pad. Here's what we do next. Step 1. Document every piece of evidence. Step 2. File a report with Adult Protective Services. Step 3. Send your daughter and son-in-law a cease and desist letter. I asked the question that had been sitting in the back of my mind. What about the money? We can demand restitution, Rebecca said. And if they refuse? Then we file a civil lawsuit. Possibly criminal charges. Grandma was quiet for a moment. Then she asked something none of us expected. How fast can someone sell a house? Rebecca paused. Excuse me. My house. Grandma said. How quickly could I sell it? Rebecca considered. With the right buyer? Maybe 2 weeks. Grandma looked at me. Do you remember the Morrisons next door? They asked last year if I'd ever sell. She turned back to the lawyer. I think it's time I called them. My parents were drinking wine in Paris. Posting photos of the Eiffel Tower. They thought they had 3 weeks before their plan started. They didn't realize something important. My grandmother had just started making her own plan. And it was going to destroy theirs. My grandmother called the Morrisons that afternoon. Tom Morrison had lived next door for nearly 15 years. The kind of neighbor who shoveled her driveway every winter and brought over fresh peaches from eastern Washington in the summer. When she explained that she might be willing to sell the house quickly, he didn't ask many questions. My son Jake has been looking for a place. Tom said over the phone. We could come by tomorrow and talk. They showed up Sunday morning. His wife Linda, and their son Jake, with his 3-year-old daughter holding a stuffed rabbit. The little girl immediately wandered toward the bird feeder in the backyard. Grandma watched her through the kitchen window. She likes birds, she said quietly. Jake smiled. She's obsessed with them. We sat around the kitchen table while Tom laid out the offer. We can do $585,000. All cash, he said. No inspection contingencies. If you want to move fast, we can close in 10 days. It was slightly under the full market value. But speed mattered more. Grandma didn't hesitate. She signed the agreement that afternoon. I witnessed it. Linda reached across the table and squeezed Grandma's hand. Your home will be loved, she said. Grandma nodded once. I know it will. The next week moved quickly. Monday morning Rebecca Sloan filed the report with Adult Protective Services. 2 hours later we got a call from a caseworker named Marcus Delaney. Hayes, he said. Financial exploitation of seniors is something we take very seriously. I'll need to review the evidence. Tuesday he came to the house. Grandma showed him everything. The emails. The bank transfers. The nursing home reservation. Marcus took photographs of the documents and wrote notes while his expression grew darker. This is one of the clearest cases I've seen. He said finally. What happens next? Grandma asked. I contact your daughter and son-in-law when they return from their trip. Wednesday the title company began preparing the paperwork for the home sale. Thursday through Sunday, we packed 40 years of memories. Photo albums. Old letters. My grandfather's watch. The quilt Grandma had sewn by hand in the early 80s. Some things she kept. Most she donated. On Saturday she stood in the doorway of her old bedroom. I raised Laura in this room. She said quietly. Her voice didn't break. I stayed awake for 2 nights straight when she had pneumonia at 7. I didn't say anything. Because there wasn't anything useful to say. Grandma took one last look around the room. Then she walked away. She didn't look back again. December 15th. Closing day. We sat in a conference room at the title company. Grandma on one side of the table. The Morrisons on the other. A woman named Patricia walked us through the documents, one by one. Hayes. After the remaining mortgage payoff and closing costs. Your net proceeds are $402,000. Grandma signed each page calmly. When the final document was complete, Patricia smiled. Congratulations. The property officially belongs to Jake Morrison. Jake shook Grandma's hand. My kids are going to grow up in this house. He said. I hope they fill it with noise. Grandma replied. That same afternoon she made 3 decisions. First, she bought a 1-bedroom condo 15 minutes from my apartment. Price. Arshi Yuan Mei Yuan. Paid in full. No mortgage. The building had a small park behind it. A community room. And a pool where they held water aerobics classes twice a week. Second, she opened a new account and set aside $41,500. That's the money they owe me. She said. One way or another. I'm getting it back. Third, she met with Rebecca again. Together they established an irrevocable trust using the remaining money. I was named the beneficiary. Even if someone tried to pressure her in the future. The principal couldn't be touched. When the documents were signed, Rebecca closed the folder. Your daughter and son-in-law are about to realize their plan no longer works. Grandma nodded slowly. Because at that exact moment my parents were sitting in a cafe somewhere in Switzerland, posting photos of mountains, smiling into cameras. They had no idea that the house they planned to steal no longer belonged to my grandmother. And when they came home, they were about to find out something else. The law was waiting for them. My parents came home 3 weeks later. They didn't call first. They drove straight to my grandmother's house. Except it wasn't her house anymore. A moving truck sat in the driveway. Children's bicycles leaned against the porch rail. Jake Morrison answered the door holding his daughter. From what my father later told our lawyer. He stood there for a full 30 seconds before he managed to ask the question. Where's Margaret Hayes? Jake simply replied. She sold us the house. That was the moment their entire plan collapsed. 2 hours later my phone rang. My father. His voice was tight. Where is your grandmother? She's safe. I said. We just went to her house. He snapped. There are strangers living there. What the hell did you do? I didn't do anything. I said. Grandma sold it. Silence. Then my mother's voice came through the phone in the background. She can't sell that house. That's family property. No. I said calmly. It was her property. My father's voice dropped lower. Tell me where she is. So we can talk. Or so you can try to force her into Evergreen Care residence like you planned. Another long silence. They knew then. They knew I had everything. I'll send you our lawyer's contact information. I said. Then I hung up. 2 days later my parents received 2 certified letters. Both from Rebecca Sloan, attorney at law. Each letter contained the same demand. Full restitution of $41,500 plus $6,000 in damages for emotional distress. Total owed. $1,600,000. If they refused, Rebecca would file a civil lawsuit and refer the case to the district attorney for criminal investigation under Washington state elder exploitation statutes. They hired a lawyer. Not a good one. Probably the only one they could afford. 10 days later their attorney called Rebecca. My clients are willing to settle. The terms were simple. 12 monthly payments. Just under FIRA. 000 per month. Miss a single payment and the full balance would become immediately due. They signed the agreement. Because they didn't have another choice. The first payment arrived January 15th. A cashier's check. Grandma kept a small notebook in her kitchen drawer. She wrote carefully on the first page. Payment, 1 of 12. Received. Then she closed the notebook and set it aside. Life moved forward. Her new condo turned out to be perfect. Bright windows. A balcony facing the park. Within a month, she had joined the building's book club. 8 women arguing loudly about novels every Tuesday night. Thursday mornings, she started attending water aerobics classes. The first time I visited during one of those classes, she waved at me from the pool like a teenager. "Ethan," she shouted across the water. "Meet Joan and Patricia." She looked stronger. Not just physically. Something about her had changed. She had drawn a boundary and survived it. Every month the payment arrived. February. March. April. Right on time. My parents tried reaching out several times. Birthday cards. Emails. An invitation to dinner. Grandma declined them all through Rebecca. Not angry. Not emotional. Just firm. "You can love people," she told me one night over dinner. "And still protect yourself from them." It's been almost a year since that morning at the airport. My grandmother is 73 now. She lives in her condo overlooking the small park behind the building. The place is full of plants. She insists she's just babysitting. Though they've been there for months now. Every Wednesday night we have dinner together. Sometimes it's just the two of us watching Jeopardy! The same way we've done since I was a kid. The 12 payments arrived exactly as agreed. Every month. No excuse. No delays. When the final one came in, my grandmother wrote the last line in her notebook. Payment 12 of 12. Complete. Then she closed the notebook and put it away. Not with anger. Just closure. My parents are still working through their debts. They're still in therapy. They visit occasionally now. But the rules are clear, and the boundaries don't move. Things will never go back to the way they were. And that's okay. Because this whole experience taught me something important. Being kind doesn't mean being weak. Loving your family doesn't mean letting them destroy you. And forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means accountability first. Then, maybe, rebuilding something new. If you take anything from this story, let it be this. Financial abuse of elderly people happens more often than most families want to admit. Watch for the signs. Ask questions. Protect the people who protected you. Sometimes doing the right thing means standing against your own family. And sometimes that's exactly what justice looks like. If this story resonated with you, consider sharing it or subscribing for more real-life family stories like this. Disclaimer. This story is based on personal experiences and shared for educational and awareness purposes regarding financial elder abuse.